Hello and welcome back to GRIDwrap on this fine Monday. Now, we have quite a serious subject to talk about today, and we are missing our co-host, Tessa Harrington, who couldn't be with us today. But we do have our two guests today that I'm going to introduce you to now. First one I'm going to come to is Sher Salmson. Hello, Sher. Welcome to GRIDwrap.
Hello there. It's nice to be here.
And Sweetest Sands, and welcome to you as well, Sweetest.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Now, the subject we've been talking about today, I entitled GRIDwrap as, what did I call it? I called it Sanctuary today, and really it's about finding sanctuary. We're going to talk about domestic violence, sexual abuse, and stalking. So just a fine little trio of subjects there. We have talked in the past about cyberbullying, but this takes us off in a different direction. Now, we'll come to you, Sher. Now, do you want to explain to everybody what you do in real life and what you do on Second Life?
Sure, and thank you for the opportunity. This particular subject, these issues, are one of my passions in life. And it is my real-life work. I work for a prosecutor's office in the state of Tennessee, and I'm the director of a domestic violence unit, as well as director of law enforcement training. So not only do I have an opportunity to work one-on-one with victims and survivors of these horrible crimes, but I also give training and public awareness appearances regarding these issues. So that's what I do in real life. And in Second Life, actually the first 2 years I was in Second Life, and I've been in over 3 now, I was in ministry. And while I was in that particular ministry, it was called Hope Springs Eternal, I constantly encountered people who were victims of domestic violence right now, and actually assisted some to get out, to be safe, by canvassing the laws in their state and helping them become aware of what their rights were as victims of those crimes.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Sher. Now, I come to Sweetest. And Sweetest, I was talking to you earlier today, and I started to talk to you about what the program was about today, and you expressed an interest. And do you want to explain to our audience why?
Well, for a few reasons. One being mainly myself. I have suffered in real life and in Second Life through stalking and domestic violence. And another reason is because I have worked with several support groups within SL in my time here with those who have also suffered in real life and a little in Second Life too.
Thank you, Sweetest. Thank you. Really appreciate you coming today. Sher, you talked about public awareness, and, you know, we could be castigated a little bit on GRIDwrap for saying, well, this isn't about the grid. It's not about the grids. We're here to talk about virtual worlds and developing virtual worlds and creating virtual worlds. So why have you chosen to take public awareness into a virtual world, which is Second Life?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. And the truth of the matter is, knowledge is power. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, virtual or the real world, domestic violence is a reality. Sexual abuse is a reality, and stalking is a reality. So I can think of no other better place to be than in the virtual world, raising awareness that this is a human rights issue. People think it's a women's issue because primarily it is women who are victims of this crime, but it is a human rights issue, and certainly males have been and can be victims of domestic abuse as well.
Is that on the increase now, do you think, Sher?
I think it's very underreported. Of course, domestic violence is very underreported, period. But I would dare say that certainly male domestic violence is less reported even. There's a lot of dynamics that come into play when a male is a victim of domestic abuse.
Okay, so you come into Second Life. How do you set up an awareness? How do you set up public awareness within something like Second Life?
Well, I had an opportunity. I've been asked before to speak at a particular event, and with me, it's very interesting that for whatever reason, some people call it chance, some people call it coincidence. I don't. For whatever reason, I've had a lot of victims of domestic abuse cross my path. I guess it's just such a natural thing for me to talk about. I too am a survivor of domestic abuse. I learned about it as a child. So anyone who speaks with me for any length of time, it's bound to come up. And when it does, it just totally shocks the other person, and they start telling me their story. And one of the best things you can do with someone who is hurting is simply to stop and to listen and to validate and to acknowledge that that person is telling you something that is very, very heavy in their life.
I was telling a recent member, a recent addition to our team today, what the subject was going to be tonight. And that person said that they had been shown videos, and they're recently from the Teen Grid, they'd been shown videos at school about this very subject. Now, when I was a kid, there was nothing. It was shameful to talk about it outside the family home, and things were trapped within the family home. There was no information to be got hold of, nowhere to go. And people very often, even if you did share with somebody, it was outside their experience. They were just embarrassed by it or ashamed by it. Is the situation still the same now, Sher?
Well, actually, it is not. Of course, there's still that residue, but the truth of the matter is, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. It was a family matter. It was not something you talked about. And law enforcement was even trained to not intervene in these types of relationships. But around 1995, there was a horrendous, unsolved, so they say, a double homicide in Los Angeles. It's the O.J. Simpson case, actually. It's not unsolved, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Just my opinion. And from there, there had never been as many calls to the national hotline as when that particular incident happened and the trial that followed. And from there, the states, all of them, began re-looking at the issues and the way these types of crimes were handled in each state, and a lot of wonderful new laws were enacted protecting, actually giving enhanced protection for victims of these crimes.
So how does that manifest itself?
Well, there's a lot of repercussions anytime that you try to address something that has been let go for so long. Victims know, for the most part. Now, I live in the Appalachian area, and there's still a lot of people who believe that a person, well, I'm going to say it, a man has a right to do what he wants to do in his own home, free from anyone else's interference. But by and large, there is a lot of public awareness. There are lots and lots of shelters for battered women and children. There are lots of public awareness, and yes, we go into the schools and talk about healthy and unhealthy relationships as far as teen dating violence is concerned. So basically what it boils down to finally, I believe that what started out as a whisper is now just a really loud scream, because every day still in the United States of America, there is an average of 4 women who are murdered by someone who says, "But I love you, baby."
I find it really interesting. I don't mean interesting, but I can't think of another word for it, really. Well, really sad, I suppose, in a way that we call it domestic violence, because to me that sort of places it in a situation, it's become very commonplace, that phrase, and sort of to some extent undermined by its common usage. I don't know whether you'd agree with this, Sweetest, but when I hear you say, Cher, you know, that people are murdered, they're murdered, right? This isn't about somebody slapping somebody across the face, is it?
Indeed.
Either of you. Yeah.
Well,
Do you want to come in with that, Sweetest? Yeah.
Okay. For myself, I think it's a matter of, to me, not only is it sort of a force that's taking over your whole life, but like it's an internal battle. You seem to feel that you are losing yourself. And I think, although people tend to judge and say, oh, it's only for the weaker type, I think even if you have the most strongest personality out there, I think everyone is in danger, shall we say, of at some given point or time suffering some kind of bullying. But I think the problem is when do you realise that that line has been crossed? When is it that you really do lose yourself? That's how I foresee it, anyway, from my experience. And then when you do lose yourself, where do you go to find that support to get back to being that stronger person you were before that line was crossed? If that makes any sense.
It does make sense. I mean, how does it get crossed? Is this something where you wake up one day and you're living with a different person? I saw a joke one day, which was, it doesn't matter who I marry, when I wake up the next day, it's somebody else.
Yeah.
It was a rather ironic joke on a greetings card, I think. But Cher, what would you say? We don't look at people, do we? Men or women, we don't look at a partner and say, I'm going to go for that partner because that partner is going to beat my head in.
Well, exactly. And you know, again, there's just so many good things that we can talk about as far as raising awareness. And one of them is, no, they don't wear a big A on their head for abuser. That's one word. But, you know, they don't.
It's they are so, really.
As a matter of fact, what you would find, more likely than not, they're very charming in the beginning. Because, see, the big thing is to realize what this is. It's about, domestic violence is not just about getting hit, first of all. You've got to know what it is. It's about one person in a relationship who wants the power and control. Well, how are they going to get it? Well, they use a whole lot of different tactics. It's not all just hitting. They don't take you on the first date and punch you in the face and say, okay, from now on, you're going to do what I say. That's not it at all. They use tactics, any tactic that they can to get the power and control. And once they get it, that's when the heat is on and they want to maintain it. So again, they use tactics. Did you know that I love you can be a tactic? Threatening to kill themselves can be a tactic. Tears can be a tactic. It's not all the violence. Fear is a big tactic. 75% of women who are murdered when they utter those words, I'm leaving. So people say, well, why doesn't she just leave? Well, here's a clue. Here's the clue. It's called fear. And it's not just fear of dying. It's also the fear of the unknown. Because, again, many times they have been robbed of the essence of themselves, and their confidence has been stripped. And maybe they've not been allowed to work. Maybe they have lots of children. Maybe they have no finances. Maybe they have gone back to the family so many times and friends that they have said, if you go back one more time, don't ask us again. So there's so many logical reasons why women stay and leave and go back. But the wrong question is, why doesn't she just leave? The right question is, why does that person batter? Why does that person abuse? That's the right question.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what are the signs? I mean, did you see any signs, Sweetest? When did you know that you were in the wrong relationship?
Well, to be honest, many times, but then they convince you, you see, like myself. I was in a situation, first of all, it was a matter of blaming stresses in his life. And I felt bad that, and he made me believe that I was adding to those levels of stress.
Mm.
And so, even once when I did get the guts to leave him, he took himself to hospital and faked a heart attack. And I was so infuriated, and I did go to the hospital, and I was still intent on leaving. And then he
Mm.
begged me and tried to reason with me, and then actually used another guilt tactic, saying that, okay, he admits he's been wrong, but I also have done things wrong, and that we should try again, fresh slate. And you do. And you
Mm.
try to believe that you want to believe in the good in that person, because it's so hard to believe that somebody, and I have to put it this way, can be so evil. You just keep like that hope inside of you that there is some strain of goodness left in him, and you want to believe that perhaps you can help them to be a better person. And that
Mm.
was, I think, my biggest weakness in my scenario. And I think a lot of women suffer that way, and men too. That we all try to hope that we can make them to become a better person.
So that's a vicious cycle, isn't it, Cher? I mean, coming back to you, how do people interrupt that cycle? It's that thing, isn't it, of believing that person, and that person possibly believes it themselves. They possibly have every intent of it, but actually something is driving them not to be able to carry through the intent.
Well, I agree, and what Sweetest just described is yes, it's classic. It's very classic. She just described tactics, and of course, there's all kinds of tactics, but the cycle of violence. You know, you said, well, how can one know? Well, first of all, again, knowledge is power. Use the internet. Most of the, if not all, the sites that deal with this issue now even have an escape button to where a person can get off the website real quick and not be tracked if they are looking at these types of materials. But look at the signs and characteristics of an abusive personality. Know what those are. And when you see them, I don't care if this person is the best thing since sliced bread. Run, Forrest, run, is what it boils down to. And also, recognize that there is a cycle, the cycle of just to start somewhere where the tension's building and everyone knows it's coming. You know it's coming, they know it's coming. If there's children in the home, the children know it's coming. I'm going to tell you what, if there's a pet in the home, the pet knows it's coming because the tension builds. And then there's an explosion. And during that explosion, that person who is maintained and got that power and control in that home will use as little or as much of whatever they need to let everyone know one more time, excuse me, I'm in control here. And then, of course, after that, there is the possibility that that person feels bad, and it's what we call the honeymoon stage. The honey, I'll never do it again. The honey, I'll quit drinking, we'll go to church. Let's go see your mother and ask her to fix us some of those good old chicken and dumplings. You know, just whatever it is that they can, again, use that tactic, and that cycle just spins around and around and around.
Now, this, of course, doesn't just affect the person it's being perpetrated upon if it's limited to one person. I mean, it can be limited to the wife or the husband. As you say, you brought in there the animals in the house. You've brought in there the children. And I just want to say to the audience here, I've posted in our local chat, and we've posted in the chat on the live stream, a link. And the link is to a film. The film was taken by a 13-year-old boy, I think, on his phone of his mother and his father in their bedroom at home. And the father is not loud. He's not loud, but he's repetitive. And I would urge you all to have a look at this. It's on YouTube. So it's youtube.com/watch?V=YB3FV UN7K2K. I'm not quite sure what the name of it is. So we've put it up on the chats, and it will go up on the edit. And I would urge, I've actually put it on my Facebook, so on my Facebook page. So if you go to Do the Dragonesh on Facebook, I've posted it there. Have a look at that very short but rather, well, very chilling sequence, and understand that that family had 3 small boys there, and those boys are sitting there watching that happen to their mother over and over again. And I'm assuming that at some point those boys will crack. If that violence was allowed to continue, those boys would crack and have a go at the father or take it all into themselves. But I'm being a sort of pop psychologist here, Cher. I'm no expert. What do you think?
Well, the children have been very much effective. The lady's name is Susan Steele, and I actually met her a couple of years ago. And one of the things that struck me about that video is the fear in her eyes. And when I met her about a year ago, she's just such a beautiful lady. And I told her, I said, it is so nice to see some light in your eyes. 13-year-old child videoing that. And the reason that she ended up getting out, by the way, is first of all, she had an employer who recognized something's not right here. And it kindly came to a head when her boss heard her calling him master on the phone. And she would come in with bruises, and she would wear scarves and try to hide them and so on and so forth. But she realized that he had made the statement he thought he was going to have to give the kids a little bit of what she was getting. And that is what spurred her on to, I've got to do something. But yes, that is a very, very powerful video. Please watch that, because we hear a lot about it, we talk about it, but this is an actual incident of domestic violence that you can see. And may I say this too, what you said about the word domestic violence, I'm going to tell you what I call it. I call it domestic terrorism, because people are being terrorized in their home and held prisoners like a prisoner of war, and they're being treated as such. So I appreciate your calling attention to how perhaps someone might think that it's no big deal, someone just got slapped, because it's much more than that.
Sweetest, would you be able to tell us how you got out of that situation?
Well, it was rather hard, actually. I tried for many years. It dragged on. But eventually what I had to do was move, cut complete ties with people that we both knew. It then became a stalking situation, actually. And unfortunately I had to just cut ties with most people and hide my address and telephone number, and lie low for quite some time. Because I tried every other means, and unfortunately, due to certain contacts he had, he always managed to find me. So I tried literally every means possible, and that seemed to be the only way I could get away from him.
And there are indeed many refuges, aren't there? Sorry, go on.
Yes, that's okay. No, I was just going to say, he believed that he owned me in the end. He really believed that, and at one point he did convince me that I couldn't survive without him, but I did. And I learned that I could live without him, and that love is not enough. I always hear, but love, and he loves me and I love him, it's not enough. There has to be that respect, that boundary.
Cher.
Yes.
There are, I remember one part of London, I live in London, one part of London I was living in, I'm not going to say where it was because I know there was a refuge there. And people all around knew there was a refuge there. We never, ever talked about it. And if anybody asked, we never told them where it was. There was something, it was just like a vow of silence that everybody tacitly took. We never ever talked about it or anything else. We knew it was there, but people in that street were protecting those women. It was mainly women and children in that particular case. Now, what is it that drives somebody? What is it that drives somebody like Sweetest was stalked effectively by her ex, right? What drives them? So they're not saying, I hate you, I want to get rid of you, so you're getting on my nerves, this is why I'm behaving like that. Sweetest had left. People leave and disappear, and yet they are hunted out by the perpetrators, aren't they?
Yes.
What is driving that person to? I mean, Sweetest believed that he thought she belonged to him. What is that? That's not love, is it?
No, it isn't. And it's very interesting because, again, remember what domestic abuse is about. It's about power and control. What have they lost when that person leaves? They've lost power and control. So they set about instantly trying to, again, get that power and control back. Not to mention the fact, if you will look into a lot of perpetrators of domestic abuse, their profile, there's a lot of narcissism there. So, it's about getting that power and control. It's about keeping it. And it's about, it's obsession. And no, obsession is not love. Obsession is a sign of ownership. And Sweetest is exactly right. That's what it boils down to. And when that person chooses to leave, they feel betrayed, and they might even feel that that other person doesn't even have a right to a life beyond what they had with them. So it's obsession, and it's dangerous.
I'm being asked by Deathstroke Rain here, does the man make the woman feel like she can't do any better than him and that she's nothing without him?
I think so. I think that that's part of, I'll use the word brainwashing. I've worked with, personally, thousands of victims of domestic abuse. And yeah, and I'm just going to tell you, I mean, beautiful women with beautiful hearts, and they come in and they have no self-confidence. They feel, they've listened. They've believed what they've been told, which is no one will believe you, and no one else would have you, and you're not good enough. Sweetest, what do you think about that?
Well, for my own situation, he made me believe that anyone else I went to would let me down, whereas he will always be there for me. And any slight friend that sort of maybe let me down on a meeting or whatever, he used to say, you see, and I would always be there for you, and I'll always be there to pick up the pieces. And you end up becoming, I end up getting to the point, I know this might sound silly, but I couldn't even remember how to change a light bulb one day, and I thought, oh my gosh, have I literally become so dependent on this man I can't do anything myself? And I started developing panic attacks because I started to think I literally could not do anything without him. And I felt like I was stuck to him. Not that I wanted to be. In the end, I had this hate towards him. And I couldn't stand hearing him. And I used to pick fault with him. But it's like, it was a tie I couldn't break. If that makes any sense. I think it's hard for someone else to understand unless you're in it. When he touched me, I felt physically sick. I did date other people, but it was just like he magnetized me to come back. He used to make me feel guilty. He even got down to silly roots, like he went to my mother one day, I never forget this, and told her how I'd used abusive language. We weren't children. This is sort of school garden behaviour. I don't know what he tried to gain out of it. So my mother called me up saying, why is he here telling me this? It's like desperate means, any means he could to try and trap me. And I felt so suffocated. And then when I managed to escape him, I felt so lost. It's like I had no control. I couldn't do anything. I felt so helpless. And I hated it because I knew it wasn't me. So I don't always believe, in all instances, it's a matter of you think you can't do better. It's you know it, but it's that how to get from A to B. It's that sort of pathway in the middle. You're so sort of struck down and weak from all the fighting and trying to keep going and getting through every day that you kind of lose, I don't know, that energy to move to the next stage in your life.
Yes.
It's hard to put
So
into words, I think.
I think you're putting it very clearly into words, Sweetest, actually. I think you're very, very articulate about it. Thank you. And, thank you very much for coming on this program and saying this, because there'll be many people who will be relating to it. I've already had, I think, over half a dozen IMs from people who have related to this, that they've had violence in the family, in their immediate situation, whatever. So that's already half a dozen. We're just sitting here talking about it right now for half an hour. So Sher, where do people go from here? What is there out there where can they find help? What can they do if they're like this? I mean, are they allowed on computers? Can they get on computers? I was very struck by what you said about escape buttons. So where are those sites for the escape buttons, and why have they got them on?
Well, they have them on there because basically what it boils down to is if they were to be found looking at subject matter such as that, it could cost them a whole lot. They could be beaten, they could be punished. Obviously, if they're using the computer could be taken from them, which may be their link to any type of communications. But see, the thing is they have to find someone safe to talk to. And it's hard to trust. It's hard to trust. First of all, more likely than not, they've been told that no one's going to believe them. Mm-hmm. And second of all, even if they thought that someone would believe them, they also, let me point this out, most people in these types of relationships, they don't want the relationship to end. They want the violence and the abuse to stop. One thing that most people don't want to hear when you talk about this particular issue is the word love. But, most of the victims that I've worked with and survivors, they did love that person. Mm-hmm. They loved that person. They didn't want the relationship to end. They had children together. They had property together, history together. They wanted the violence to stop. So where do they turn? Well, it's hard for them to know. It's hard to know who to trust. But there are organizations out there. There are hotlines that are confidential. There are shelter programs with hotlines, and it's confidential. The best thing that one could do, I believe, is first of all, if you find yourself in a situation where you are in fear for your life or the life of your children, get out. Get out. And find a way to get out. Easy for me to sit here and say. I don't mean to make it sound like it's easy, but I want you to live, and I want your children to live. Reach out and find someone who can help you access the resources that you need in order to make yourself safe. One cannot think clearly and make decisions when they're having to worry every moment if they're going to be battered or if they're going to be killed. So one needs a safe place, a safe haven, so that they can clear their mind and assess what they can do to make some decisions to make their home a peaceful home.
Where can they do that, for example, on Second Life? And what can the grid owners do about it? Is there anything they can set up? I mean, is it appropriate for them to do anything about it?
Well, I think so, but, I'm way over the top on this thing. I know that. But, basically what it boils down to, when I had ministry and a person that I was working with came to my area and they were trying to get away from someone who was harassing them and stalking them and abusing them in Second Life. I had a button, and it was called eject and ban. So I made my place a safe place. And, you know, it would be up to individual Sims as to whether or not they want to take a stand and draw a line in the sand and say, hey, we want this to be a safe place for everyone. You know, we want this to be a safe place for everyone. It's just like in real life. People have to make that decision. You know, take a stand, stand up, speak up, say it's wrong.
So you hear that, folks. And in Second Life, I'm sure, Sher, Sweetest, you've told us about support groups in here. There are places that people can go and talk about it, are there?
There are. There are many places. I always think the best thing to do is to contact a Second Life mentor, because they will be able to put you in touch with trained specialists within Second Life. I think that's always the best means to go. I believe on the wiki pages there's a list of various support groups that are recognised. But of course you have to also be careful that you don't end up in a support group full of people who perhaps are not so aware of how to deal or to advise. You have to be careful of that too. But there are many support groups in SL that you can turn to for help in various different countries all over the world, which is another bonus.
Well, of course, there is a support group that actually is all over the world, which is Al-Anon. Because you were talking earlier, Cher, about it being related to alcohol quite often. Not always, but quite often. And there is Al-Anon, isn't there, which is for the friends and families of alcoholics.
Sure, but can I make a point here?
Sure, do.
I did allude to alcohol because probably in, I dare say 50% of the cases there's alcohol or drugs involved. But I do want to make it very clear that it does not cause domestic violence. Because remember, the other 50% are drinking and they're not battering. Battering is a choice. As far as alcohol is concerned, when there is alcohol involved, it lowers inhibitions. And I think that there's even a possibility for people to be even hurt more. But it does not cause domestic abuse. And stress does not cause domestic abuse. You know, have you ever been stressed? I have. And, you know, I choose not to, for instance, get up and turn over this beautiful table of brownies sitting here if I get stressed. You know what I'm saying? So, it's an excuse that both people in the relationship can use. Many people I've worked with have said, well, he only does this when he's drunk. Well, you know, maybe there's certain things he only does when he's drunk, but I'll guarantee you he's jealous the whole time, he's controlling the whole time, and so on and so forth. So I'm really glad that you brought that back up.
So tell me something. These, that jealousy, possessiveness, all those things, I mean, that in a virtual world, those can be exacerbated, can't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. What do you think about that, Sweetest?
Well, it's difficult. I think in a virtual world setting, I think they're able to control more. It's not so, unless of course you can turn your PC off, of course, but I don't know if you're aware of, there is stalking within the cell. I've also been a victim of that, unfortunately. And it's quite as disturbing as being stalked in real life, I must say. Because there you do end up paranoid, because they can create different accounts and what have you, and they have these tools where they can track you, and it can get very disturbing. So it's a hard one to answer, in my opinion, going through my own experiences.
Okay, so I want to go back to the kids. We've got the teen grid. The teen grid now has come on to the main adult grid in Second Life, for example. There are other grids out there which are family grids. how can we help kids in this situation who may feel that they've got nowhere to go with it?
Well, I think it's a great question, and basically what it boils down to, I mean, I just hope that more people, for instance, people who are listening right now, watching right now, that
Mm.
they will get active. You know, we need more people involved. We need more people willing to listen and to stop and to take whatever steps needed in order to get help for the person who happens to disclose to them. I want each of us to always remember you might be the first person, the very first person that this person has disclosed what has been going on in their second life or in their first life. And what you do or don't do can make a really, really big difference as to how things turn out for that person.
Well, you've said, both of you have said, to have somebody to talk to is invaluable. Well, what happens after that?
Well, I want to point this out. We can't empower victims. They have to empower themselves. We can't tell them what to do. I would never even consider telling someone else what to do. It's all I can do to
Mm.
take care of my own business. I don't give advice. What I do is I give information. I give resources. I will assist them in any way that I can to access resources. I believe that I mentioned that some that I have worked with here in Second Life didn't were not aware of the laws, for instance, in their own states, and so
Mhm.
I'd simply gone on the internet and looked at their laws and talked to them about what their rights were in the states that they lived in. And listening is a very, very big deal. Believing, I don't care if you don't believe. Even if you don't believe, do not let that person get a hint of thinking that you don't believe them. Because again, just because you don't have a point of reference in your life, and maybe it sounds bizarre to you, it doesn't mean that that's not happening in their lives. And it's very, very important that they feel like you believe.
Share, thank you. Sweetest,
Well,
how did you empower yourself? And you patently have.
it's hard. I agree that the first person that you open up to, it's important to listen more than to speak. I think sometimes we all get excited and we think, oh, this person shared and we want to help them. I think in the first instance, it's important to let them just to voice out whatever's in their heart, because that person might have bottled things up for years and years, and you're the first person they're venting to. So I always think it's good to listen, but really listen. And then when the right time will come, offer those contacts and offer support, even if it's just for them to come back and talk to you. Don't push your point of view on, because I know myself, when I first spoke to someone about it, my friend started to try and push me, and it made me
Mm.
panic and backtrack. And then I started to say, no, 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 it's not true, and convince myself everything was okay. And you try again. What actually gave me the push in the end, I took a step back. I mean, it was getting really ridiculous. I mean, I had one time he had strangled me till I was unconscious,
Mm.
because I'd answered the phone and there was a man on the end, um, and I thought to myself, this is ridiculous. He's going to kill me. I knew that if I stayed, he would kill me. So I had to really fight with myself, make the decision that I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. That was the key decision. I wanted to live. Um, but then I started to make excuses like material things. So I think if you do meet someone, what you need to hold on to the fact that materialistic things in life mean nothing at the end of the day. They can be replaced. Life can't. And you have to try and make the person see that they they do deserve to live, they do deserve to be happy, and they can be. It's going to be hard. Don't try and convince them it's going to be easy, because it's not. But they all they have to do is make that step and not look back. The minute you look back, you fall into the trap of going back to that old life. So anybody that is going through that, I just implore you, just Make that step. Don't look back. Don't think about the past. These materialistic things, you hang on to them, they just are holding memories of those painful things. I mean, I know myself, I kept some things for, even now, to be totally honest, I have some things, and every time I look at them, it's like a flash, everything comes back. But I need those still, because I look at it now, and instead of having fear, I have more strength, and I look and I say, look, I got here, I'm here, and I'm living.
Well said.
Yeah. Thank you, Sweetest. Well, we're coming towards the end of our program today, and I'm wondering what the best use of these virtual worlds is for people who are suffering from domestic violence. Whether it is about getting the information, it is about opening choices to them that they at the moment cannot see that they've got. Is it about interrupting the cycle so your children don't go through it or they're not experiencing it themselves? One thing, of course, well, I'll come to that, but we've come to the point where, and I kind of gave you a bit of a warning before we went live, both of you, to that we come to the point where I usually ask Tessa to lead off and just say what's in her head and what she's thinking and what she's hoping for. It doesn't have to do with anything. It doesn't need to have to do with anything to do with what we've been speaking about today. So I'm going to ask Sweetest if she would speak first on that. What's in your head and what are you thinking about and what you're hoping for? And it doesn't have to be anything related to what we've been talking about today, but obviously it can be.
Well, actually, funny enough, I think back to this one particular day, the first time I tried to escape from this life. And I remember that I was on a motorway and I had basically jumped out the car and I decided I was going to go, and I was panicking and I didn't know which direction to go, and I knew he was coming. And in my mind, in this moment, I felt like I could breathe again. I don't know why that came to me, but it did. But coming from that, I think anyone out there who is suffering, SL is a great platform because you can learn to be confident, learn to be you again. And I think only if you are suffering you can really relate to that. It's like you lose yourself, but you don't actually. You've just put yourself in a little tiny box, and you can open that box again and learn to grow and to let all these ties that hold you back from living your life, you can be free again. It is scary, but one day you will breathe again. You just have to look forward. And I say to anyone out there suffering, you don't deserve this. You don't deserve to suffer. No one in this whole world has the right to make you miserable. Even if it's from a parent, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever situation you're in. No one deserves to have someone else make the choice in your life. Everyone deserves to live. Everyone deserves to be happy. So if anyone is preventing that happening, just get away from it. You'll find your strength. You'll find your peace.
Thank you very much, Sweetest. How about you, Sher?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I am so thrilled to be here, and this is totally awesome, and to me exemplifies just how things can be done for the good in Second Life. Sweetest, let me tell you something. I admire you, and you have such courage, and know what you've done is not easy, and it'll always be part of your history. But there is life after domestic abuse. You're a survivor. You're a survivor. You're not a victim. You're a survivor. And I guess just to wrap it up, I noticed in the local chat one thing that I do want to talk about briefly. I know, I talk too much. Children.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just going to say this. If you're one of those people who can't get over, why doesn't she just leave, or she stays, she must like it, or whatever it is that, you got going on in your head, what about the children? What about the children? You say you want peace in the world. Well, peace, it begins in the home. And our children are our future. And our children are being hurt. They don't have to be directly hit to be hurt. I grew up in a home with domestic abuse, and I'm still affected by domestic abuse. I'm an adult, and as a child I had no power and I had no voice. But as an adult, I have it, and I'm going to scream to the high heavens. There's no excuse. There is no excuse for domestic abuse. I hope you'll stand up. Unite, stand up. What's wrong with saying, hey, that's wrong. That's simply wrong. And be there for that person who may decide to trust you and to disclose to you. And there's so many things that you can do and I can do to educate ourselves, to be ready for that situation, and to help make our little pieces of the world a better place. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to be here.
Thank you, Sher. I've been very, very moved by what we've heard today. It's just tremendous that we're doing it. I am a great believer in the use of these grids for the greater good. And this is a very startling example of it and how we can get information over. Somebody has said, I've been looking through the chat that I have in front of me in our in-world audience here, and people have been talking about we've got lists of UK contacts, we've got lists of US contacts, and we will put those on the edits, or you can get hold of Sher or myself, Sweetest, well, certainly myself. You can feed everything through myself. That'd be absolutely fine. Myself, Lisa Ermano, Metaverse Television, and we will pass you on to people, contacts. We've had IMs all over the place from people who've been affected by this, and we're just talking about this small gathering that we've got here on the net and in world, effectively, and people who've seen that we're talking about the subject tonight and couldn't get here, so they'll be watching the edit. Basic, and somebody else who said Cobalt Niles, who's here tonight, as talking about, even if you suspect that a child may be getting abused, report it. Even if you've made a mistake, it doesn't matter. Always act in the best interest of the child. You never know, you might be saving a life there. And for my own part, what is on my mind is just to echo what Sher said earlier. Get out. Get out. If you can, get out. If you can't get out, start thinking about it. Have a look. Look at all the contacts. The internet is absolutely filled with them. We've put them out there. We can tell you what they are if you don't actually want to go to those sites yourself. And what I would end with is these words. Don't stay until he kills you. Or don't stay until you kill him. Because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to go to jail for accidentally killing somebody whilst defending myself. So thank you very much, everybody in our audience on the net, everybody who's listened and contributed to this program, and I particularly am grateful to Sher and to Sweetest, who have shared their experiences, their strengths and their hopes today with us and all the information that they have. And thank you so much for making an absolutely riveting contribution to GRIDwrap. Thank you, Sweetest and Sher.
Thank you.
Thank you.